You've probably heard that the United States is the world's largest economy. But did you know it's also the country with the largest national debt? How did that happen, and why does it just keep getting bigger every single year? The answer is a mix of history, big policy decisions, and the unique way the U.S. financial system works. So what is the national debt? Simply put, it's the total amount of money the federal government owes. Think of it like this. Every year, the government collects money through taxes. It then spends that money on everything from national defense and highways to healthcare and social programs. When the government spends more than it collects in taxes, it runs a deficit. To cover that gap, it has to borrow money. All those yearly deficits, stacked on top of each other, make up the national debt. The story of America's debt didn't start recently. It began right after the Revolutionary War. Over the centuries, the debt has gone up and down, usually spiking during major events like wars and recessions. World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War all led to massive increases in government spending and borrowing. But in modern times, things really started to accelerate. In the 1980s, big tax cuts combined with a boost in defense spending caused deficits to climb. Then in the 2000s, another round of tax cuts, 2 long wars in the Middle East, and the 2008 financial crisis added trillions more to the bill. And of course, in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic forced the government to borrow staggering amounts of money to support the economy. Each of these events built on the last, creating the mountain of debt we see today. This brings us to the key question. If the U.S. already owes so much, why does it keep borrowing more? A huge part of the answer lies in how the federal budget is structured. A large portion of government spending is mandatory. This includes programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, which automatically pay out benefits to millions of Americans. As the population gets older, the costs of these programs naturally rise every single year. On top of that, healthcare costs in general have been increasing much faster than inflation for decades. And then, there's the interest. When you owe trillions of dollars, even a small interest rate adds up to hundreds of billions in annual payments. This interest on the existing debt becomes one of the biggest expenses in the entire budget. So, unless the government makes drastic cuts to spending or significantly raises taxes, it has to borrow more money just to pay the interest on the money it has already borrowed. So, where does all this borrowed money come from? The U.S. Treasury issues bonds and other securities. These are bought by all kinds of investors, individuals like you and me, big banks, pension funds, and even foreign governments like Japan and China. Why do they lend money to the U.S.? Because American debt is considered one of the safest investments on the planet. It's backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, which means everyone trusts that the U.S. will pay its debts. This global trust allows the U.S. to keep borrowing. Every time the government runs a deficit, it sells new treasury bonds, and investors buy them up, providing the cash needed to keep everything running. But this creates a powerful cycle. More borrowing leads to higher interest payments, which adds to future spending, which forces the government to borrow even more. Does this mean the U.S. is heading for bankruptcy? Not exactly. The government can always issue new debt to pay off old debt. And because the U.S. dollar is the world's primary reserve currency, there is always a strong global demand for U.S. bonds. This gives America a unique advantage that most other countries just don't have. However, that doesn't mean it can borrow forever without any consequences. A higher debt load means higher interest costs, which leaves less money for other priorities. It also reduces our flexibility to respond to future crises and carries the long-term risk that investors might one day lose confidence. In the end, America's massive debt is the result of a long-term pattern. Spending more than we bring in, borrowing to fill the gap, and relying on global trust to keep the system going. It continues to grow because the fundamental structure of government spending and revenue hasn't changed. The U.S. built its economic power on confidence and credit, but as the debt climbs to historic levels, the challenge is no longer just about how to borrow more, but how to eventually pay for all the promises that borrowing has funded. Thanks for watching. If you found this explanation helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos breaking down complex topics.